Setting aside the blackout at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve in Canada, the Spanish Grand Prix has become a negative turning point for Scuderia Ferrari. Since then, the SF-24 has generally become the fourth in the hierarchical order of performance, considering both the qualifying session and the race, due to development that has contributed less than expected. At the Red Bull Ring, a track that should have brought the team's strengths closer together due to its characteristics, both SF-24 cars were once again troubled by the setup, and the weekend with the sprint race came at the least opportune moment for the Italian team. This is why Silverstone already represents an important test to find the balance that has been lost for a couple of races. For now, the dream has shattered. There was a moment when it seemed Ferrari could indeed challenge Red Bull alongside McLaren. The Woking team has lived up to expectations, with Lando Norris directly battling Max Verstappen, while Ferrari seems doomed to also fall behind Mercedes, slipping into the uncomfortable role of the fourth force. With the introduction of the second significant package at the Circuit de Catalunya, following the first that debuted in Imola, the SF-24 lost the balance and good drivability that had characterized it up to that point in the 2024 Formula One Championship. As we reported after the Spanish Grand Prix, and as emphasized first by Carlos Sainz and then also by Charles Leclerc and Frédéric Vasseur, the updates brought to Montmeló indeed provided more downforce, especially at low speeds. However, the car ended up outside the operating window of the aeromechanical platform, triggering unexpected bouncing in fast corners. The two Maranello drivers, in addition to being unable to extract peak performance from the new tire on a single lap since the beginning of the Formula One season, now find themselves with a car that has detrimental bouncing at high speeds. In Austria, the last sector was a sort of nightmare for both drivers. The combination of high-speed corners and bouncing amplified the deficit in those sections of the track. The issues were only partially resolved on Saturday, mainly by working on the setup, with the two drivers taking quite different paths. The 0.3 gap to McLaren is a sign that there was also a setup problem in Maranello, an aspect not unfamiliar to Ferrari this year, as seen in other events, such as Canada, and which has been amplified since the Barcelona updates. The SF-24 does not meet expectations. Instead, it disappoints. The upgrade package introduced in Barcelona provided more aerodynamic downforce, but the negative effect is therefore that the increased downforce from the floor generates porpoising, or bouncing, in the fastest sections. The term porpoising, which surprisingly marked the beginning of the ground effect cars, has been replaced in F1 discussions with bouncing, but the substance remains unchanged. The Ferrari loses downforce suddenly due to the bouncing, causing two negative effects. First, the drivers are forced to lift off the throttle in fast corners. Second, the rear tires overheat due to the lack of grip. Ferrari's performance in fast corners is excessively slow compared to its main rivals, as emphasized by the always analytical Carlos Sainz. The harmful bouncing forces the technicians to have a narrower setup window and to make compromises, such as raising the car from the ground, as was the case in Barcelona. Aerodynamic bouncing remains a difficult side effect to completely eliminate with this generation of cars, but the work done by the teams over the past 2 years, and partly with the FIA's regulatory interventions on floor heights, had moved away the trigger point of the porpoising effect. From this perspective, all teams are in a safe zone, and while porpoising is still present to a minor extent for everyone, it should no longer an unmanageable problem. The famous aerodynamic platform, often mentioned by technical experts, shows that to make these Venturi cars work, a perfect combination of vehicle dynamics and downforce is necessary to get the most out of the available package. In this regard, Ferrari is currently lacking precisely in this aspect. Ferrari has therefore been hit by a subtle enemy, one that is hard to detect in the wind tunnel and therefore difficult to eliminate. Simulations for Silverstone indicate that the SF-24 should be competitive, just as was expected in Austria, but we all know how that ended. On Monday, Carlos Sainz was in the Maranello simulator. Yesterday, it was Charles Leclerc's turn. The drivers are working with the team to find a solution because the bouncing undermines the driver's confidence. At the Red Bull Ring, both tried to compensate for the slower speeds in fast corners with more aggressive braking, leveraging one of Ferrari's strengths. The result was that by the second lap of the sprint race on Saturday, brake disc overheating forced the drivers to lift and coast at the end of the straights, losing further performance. Clearly, this affects the driver's confidence. If they lose certainty, their feedback to the Maranello team becomes less precise, making it harder to find the best setup. It's a vicious cycle. Meanwhile, mechanics are constantly adjusting the brake ducts, trying to find the right cooling threshold without compromising the car's efficiency, which is a balance that is very difficult to achieve, especially mid-season. The feeling is that the Maranello engineers are on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Team principal Frédéric Vasseur downplays the issue. The French manager believes there is more potential in the SF-24 than is seen on track, and that a bit of motivation in qualifying, both in team choices and driver motivation, could keep them ahead of Mercedes. The fact is that Red Bull, McLaren, and Mercedes have upward performance trajectories. Only Ferrari is declining, and the drop must be stopped quickly. At the Silverstone circuit in the British Grand Prix, we will see a less powerful rear diffuser in the hope of controlling the porpoising, a step back in the hope of taking 2 steps forward later. We will see the rear wing designed for the English track and detailed modifications that are part of the British package, with the belief that 3 free practice sessions will be enough to find a compromise setup allowing the drivers to exploit the car. If we were to talk about medium/high-speed corners, the Silverstone circuit is one of the tracks with a predominance of support sections over 180, 200 km per hour in its layout. In the British Grand Prix, Ferrari will continue to work with the current package introduced in Barcelona to seek a better on-track understanding of the evolved SF-24, which is not delivering what the Maranello engineers expected. In this regard, no other significant updates are expected in England, where important new developments are anticipated from teams that did not introduce their package in Barcelona, like Haas. Silverstone will be important for Ferrari, especially for data collection, weather permitting, in a weekend where the standard format will return and on a smoother track compared to Barcelona and the Red Bull Ring. On the English circuit, changes in elevation are almost non-existent compared to Austria, and in terms of bumps, it is quite flat. The bouncing that Ferrari is suffering from essentially requires a better understanding of the new package and mainly an optimization of the setup, especially on the mechanical front, as emphasized by the team principal of the Italian team. A crucial factor currently missing and causing problems for Ferrari's technicians both in Spain and Austria. Additionally, bringing another floor to England would not have been possible for purely logistical and timing reasons. This is a crucial phase of the 2024 Formula One season for the Maranello team. Besides attempting to defend second place in the Constructors' Championship from McLaren's rise, it is very important to also establish certainty in defining the SF-25 single-seater for next year, a car that will most likely feature a pull rod front suspension and a new chassis with different weight distribution. The Ferrari for Lewis Hamilton, as it's already called in the Maranello factory, must not carry over the hidden problems and weaknesses of the SF-24.